Okay.
There you go.
Today we're going to be looking at the Israelites in Egypt. What was their experience like being in Egypt? And now we're going to get into chapters 1 and 2 that records their experiences in Egypt. Now, so we're going to be looking at chapters 1 and 2. All right. First of all, let's begin with uh, a sort of a geographical description of of Egypt, because we need to have a sense of where we are in terms of the geographical space of the book and of the experience. While we know the Egypt as Egypt, and while culturally, archaeologically, historically, we know Egypt, the Bible calls Egypt Mizraim. Mizraim. That is Mizraim. Mizmarim. And if we want to place um, this country into a geographical base, that name, the Bible calls that country, as I said, Mizraim, and it comes from that son of Ham. It's from the descendant of Ham that settled there, right? That settled in that country. So they're basically descendants of Ham, that where Ham was, and Egypt, in a sense, in fact, the Bible calls Egypt the land of Ham. All right. So now let's go to Psalm 105. I want to look at verses 23 to 27. And also the Bible calls it the country of Rahab in Isaiah 30 and verse 7. So let us look at how the Bible is describing Egypt in Psalm 105. If you could turn there, Psalm 105. Verse 23 to 27. All right, let's just go there. Then we will look at the passage in Isaiah. All right. Psalm 105, verse 23 to 27. All right. Then Israel came to Egypt. Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. And the Lord made his people very fruitful and made them stronger than their foes. He turned their hearts to hate his people, to deal craftily with his servants. He sent Moses, his servant, and Aaron, whom he had chosen. They performed his signs among them and miracles in the land of Ham. So the Bible calls Egypt the land of Ham. So if we go now again to, the Bible also calls it the land of Rahab in Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 7. So Isaiah 30 and verse 7 says, Egypt's help is worthless and empty. Therefore, I have called her Rahab, who sits still. All right. So the idea here is that the Bible is calling Egypt the land of Ham and also the land of Rahab. Now, where is Egypt? If we have a sort of concept in our mind of as to where Egypt is. Now, Egypt is in the northeast coast of Africa. Yes, it's bound by the Mediterranean Sea on the north. So if you look at a map, north of the Mediterranean Sea, that it's, and by Palestine, then there is the Arabian Desert and the Red Sea on the east. There is Nubia on the south, and the Great African Desert on the west. So that's where Egypt is in terms of its geographical base. All right. Also, I want us to notice that Egypt, in terms of its length, Egypt is about 600 miles long. It's about 600 miles long and 250 miles wide. And it's Asia, the capital at the time was Memphis. Memphis was the capital. Now, one of the things that we know about Egypt then is that it's divided into two divisions. All right, two divisions. There is the northern or lower Egypt, comprising the delta, the delta of the Nile, and there's a southern or upper Egypt, which is the valley where the course of the Nile goes. All right, so that's basically what we know. Yeah, welcome, David. Yeah, that's where we are in terms of where Egypt is and how the Bible viewed and called Egypt. All right, so what we want to look at now, if we go back to Exodus chapter 1, we're going to be looking at what was life like for the Israelites in Egypt, and we're looking at chapters 1 to 2. All right, so let's go. All right. Can we all see the screen? Is it clear to everybody? Is the screen clear to everybody? Let me do it again. Do I need to make it bigger? Okay, Chip says yes, it's okay. What about you, Manuel?
I thought at first,
that's fine. It's very small? It's okay for you, right?
I see the transmission right now.
Okay, and yeah, and Patrick, you can see it. Okay, so let's go. Make this a little bit bigger. All right. Now let's look at Egypt. A brief summary, perhaps, of Egyptian history, and this is going to be important because this is where we're going to have to place the Exodus. This is where we have to place what is happening in Egypt during Moses' time. All right. So there are dynasties. Israel's history is broken down into dynasties. There is what's called a prehistorical dynasty. And that is somewhere between 6,000 to 4,000 BC. One of the central features of this period, the river Nile, and you know, when the Nile overflows, that's where they get their irrigation and their fertility from. So, and this is going to be important when we look at the plagues. All right. So during this period, the central point for Egypt was the Nile and the Nile Valley. This for them was their source of food and water. So when the people first entered this land, they found the Nile Valley very productive and fruitful, and that's where the emphasis was. So when we come later on to look at the plagues, we're going to see how they respond. That is, the Egyptians, how they responded to the Nile River and how the plagues impacted on that. So that's the prehistorical dynasty. Then there's a period that is known as the first and second dynasties. And here, Egypt now begins to develop itself politically. It now is becoming a political powerhouse. All right. And during this time, that is during the first and the second dynasties, there are 17 kings that would reign during this period. So not only now are they becoming economically prosperous because of the Nile River and the Nile Valley, they are now developing themselves politically. And they are, as I said, they're now becoming a political powerhouse during this period, during the first and second dynasties. There's also a period that stretches from the third to the sixth dynasty. And that period is known as the Old Kingdom. All right, what's the feature of this Old Kingdom? This Old Kingdom for the Egyptians was what they would consider and what is considered as their golden age. So more and more you have Egypt becoming a superpower. All right. Pharaoh is not the name of the king, but Pharaoh is the title of the king. It's a title. So you have different pharaohs, just as if you had different Herods. All right. So when the pharaoh started to rule, Egypt then becomes a theocracy. That is a spiritual country ruled by spiritual moral principles. Not a democracy, not an autocracy, but a theocracy where it is the spiritual moral aspect, the religious aspect. It's ruled by religious laws. During this period, the period of the third to the sixth dynasty, not only are they now becoming a theocracy, but their cultural growth is also taking shape and has taken shape. So if you look at Egypt's history, you see that it is becoming economically powerful. It is able to supply itself with food. It is becoming politically powerful, but also during this period, that is the third to the sixth dynasty, what we have is the development of the pyramids. And of course, we know the pyramids are still there. So there's the cultural growth. There is the development of the pyramids, which suggest that they are now becoming a cultured society. That is, their emphasis on the sciences and on the arts really became now the wonder of the world. So not only are they scientifically and artistically growing and becoming influential, their power also become their military might and their economic strength is there. So looking at Egypt during all of this time, what we see them as in their history is that they are becoming a very diverse, powerful nation in almost every area that you have, whether it is food supply, whether it is their economy, whether it is their political system, their military might, their artistic abilities, their scientific ingenuities, and also that. The fact that the pyramids still exist after so long a time is a testament to their scientific prowess and mathematical prowess. All right. So, in terms of them becoming, sorry, excuse me, in their becoming a military powerhouse, in their becoming a economic power, what Egypt now has been shaping into, they have now divided themselves into political districts, provinces, cities, if you want. All right. So that's during their golden age period. Now, there is the intermediate period, and this now moves from the 7th to the 12th dynasty. And what do we have here? We have Amenemeth, the first, Amenemheth the first, and what we have here, well, he's called Amen or Amen or Ammon, and what becomes now also a feature of Egypt is their cultic side of them. So Ammon, the Egyptian god, they now have, Egypt now has a pantheon of gods. All right, a whole range of gods. And Ammon now becomes their chief god. So what do we know about the Egypt that Moses is going to go into? What do we know about the Egypt that the Israelites are going to go into? They're going into a society, a country, a civilization that is rich in almost every aspect of life. All right? So we get a sense of when Moses, having killed the Egyptian, and we're going to look at that, and he doesn't want to go back to Egypt because of the might and strength of Egypt. When Moses confronts Pharaoh, one of the things Moses says to him that, well, the God of Israel has sent me, and he's saying, let his people go. Pharaoh's response was based on his nationalistic pride and his sense of power. He says to Moses, who is the Lord that I should obey him? In other words, in that statement, what Pharaoh is saying, there's nobody else that as powerful as me or as I am. All right, to put it grammatically correct. There's no other God that is as more powerful than I am. And that is the situation that Moses is going to go into. Let me just take a pause here to ask you, any question or impression about this that we just looked at in terms of what does this tell us in your mind about Egypt?
They're very prideful.
All right, very, very, very proud and prideful people. Yeah. Anybody else? Your impression about Egypt at this time?
They're very educated people.
Good. Yeah. They're not fools. Either politically or what, they're not fools.
Brother,
Yes.
when you say that it was the land of Ham, Is that is the son of Noah, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's that shows the ancient of these people. The after the flood, they were one of the first ones.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're increasing in science and knowledge and everything and experience makes them very uh like a, how can we say, like developed society.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're becoming very developed now. Very. Yeah. They are. Um, and so that is the situation. All right. So that is and that is the Egypt that Moses is going into. Uh, that's where Moses is going to. All right. Let's go on. Now, the we want to look because you see, this is going to be the background for the Israelites in Egypt. When we look at the second intermediate period, that is from the 13th to the 17th dynasties, what we have here in this period is 60 different rulers marked by division and upheaval. So even though they were, in a sense, a stable society, they had some amount of problems and issues. Now, what we have here is that the Hyksos, and it's there on the screen, the Hyksos invaders who came from Palestine, they ruled a portion of Egypt from the eastern Nile to the northern section. So remember, we talked about the fact that there were divisions. So part of Egypt and the political upheaval that they were having, the unrest and division and all of that, that took place in the northern section of Egypt. All right. Now, during the 18th dynasty, there was a new kingdom that came into being by Amos the first. And what Amos the first did was to unite Egypt. So the northern and the southern part, there were upheavals and problems. Amos comes in now and unites the two divisions. And so he unites Egypt. In doing that, what he does, or what the society does, as we talk about the chief god Ammon, Ammon now becomes the greatest of all of the deities, of all of the gods that they have. All right. Now, when we step into the 19th dynasty, there is Ramesses, and he now is going to be the Pharaoh that Moses is going to contend with, Rames. All right. So that is where we're going to go when we meet Moses confronting the Pharaoh and Moses and Israelites in Egypt. All right. Now, this new king, there's a phrase that says there was a king who knew not Joseph. Now, this new king, we know from Genesis that Moses goes down into Egypt. He's the famine and he's the second in command and all of that, right? And the people were there all right. And then there's this king who came that knew not Joseph. This new king enslaved the Israelites. He enslaved Egypt, right? But also, um, uh, I am seeing something that I need to change here. But anyway, this Egyptian ruler throughout the Hyksos dynasty that we just saw earlier, and conquered Egypt about 1730 BC, and he ruled up to 1550 BC. The Egyptians were overthrown by the Hyksos king, and he took back the land. Now, the Hyksos people were a Semitic people, and the word "new" this should be K-N-E-W, K-N-E-W, not N-E-W, K-N-E-W, the king that knew. Now, in that statement, the king who knew not Joseph, what it suggests, what it means is that here is another kind of a king. Here is another king that is not going to recognize, that is not going to give credence to, that is not going to
Brother,
support.
brother Eddie?
Yes, yes,
So when we see the Ixos, can be that they are making reference to Jacob and all that family, or no, not exactly.
yes, because they were Semitic.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. Good
okay.
point.
Okay, okay. So this is the story according to Egypt. They call it Ixos.
Yes.
Oh, okay, got it.
All right, you're seeing it now. Okay, great. Okay, lovely. All right. You're pronouncing it better than I am, though. All right. Now, the Hyksos king exalted Joseph, accepted Israel into Egypt, and then Israel is going to now be a peaceful country again. But now, this king, this new Hyksos king, he comes in and he does, and it says he does not know Joseph. That is, when he conquered Egypt at about 1730 BC, he's not going to recognize, he's not going to acknowledge, he's not going to give any credence to Joseph. All right? Now, watch this. This new king that did not know Joseph, there are some things that we are going to know about his reign. All right, there are certain things that is going to come to our attention as we look at this new king that knew not Joseph.
Hey Eddie,
Yes,
do we have this PowerPoint? Have you shared this in the LMS?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. No problem. No problem. All right. Now, about 1876 BC, Israel enters Egypt. 1730 BC, Israel is enslaved and oppressed by the Hyksos king who attacked and conquered Egypt. 1757 to 1550 BC, the Egyptians overthrew the Hyksos people, regained the country, and Israel is now in slavery. 1446 BC, there's the exodus of Israel, and Israel was freed after suffering for 284 years. This is a sort of a summary of the time period that we're dealing with. All right? This is a summary of the time period that we're dealing with. Okay. Sorry to give you all of these dry, drab things, but they have implications for Israel in Egypt. And I'm hoping that I can show that and build that up to you as we go on. All right. Let's now go to Egypt and the Old Testament. We're going to look at some of these passages here now. Let's look at Egypt and Abraham. Let's go to Genesis chapter 12, verse 10 to 14, and Genesis 13, 1 and 10. All right, and could somebody read these passages for me? Genesis 12, 10 to 14, and 13, verses 1 and 10. Okay.
I can read 12.
Yes, David.
Okay. Genesis 12:10. Now there
Mhm.
was a famine in the land, and Abram went went down to Egypt to dwell there, for the famine was severe in the land. And it came to pass when he was close to entering Egypt that he said to Sarai his wife, "Indeed I know that you are a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore it will happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say, 'This is his wife,' and they will kill me, but they will let you alive. Please say you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you." So it was when Abraham came to Egypt that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful.
All right. You don't treat your wives like that, right? But anyway, um, so Abraham goes down into Egypt. All right. Now look at chapter 13 and verse 1 and 10. Genesis rather 13, 1 and 10.
You want 1 through 10?
1 and 10.
All right. The Bible says, so Abraham went up from Egypt to the Negev, he and his wife, and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. Then 10 says, Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar.
All right. Okay. Now you see again the idea of the fertility of Egypt. But so Abraham travels to Egypt given the famine, and then he leaves and goes back to Palestine with his family. Now, we won't read this because it's too long, but this is just a documentary evidence. Egypt's relationship with Joshua, not with Joseph rather, and we know what that relationship is. So he's sold in Egypt, he's in prison, he becomes a ruler, and all of that. That is what we have between Genesis 39 through to 50. But let us go to Genesis 50. I want to point out something here for a while. Let's go to Genesis chapter 50. All right. I think this is what I want. Genesis chapter 50. Let's look at verses 15 through to verse 20. All right. Look at this for me. Genesis 50, 15 to 20. Or to verse 21. All right. Someone could read it for me, please. Genesis 50, 15 to 21.
When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him." So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, Before your father died, he commanded, saying, Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespasses of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespasses of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for I am in the place. For am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive."
All right. Verse 21. Is that the end of verse 21 to verse 21?
Um, okay, now therefore do not be afraid. I will provide for you and you little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them.
All right. Okay. What is it that grabs you from this passage? What is it that impresses you from this passage?
Joseph is a man of God,
Mm-hmm.
period. I mean, you see you see characteristics of God show up in his actions, in the way that he treats his brothers and he forgives. It's powerful.
All right. Okay. Anybody else?
Their sin and their conscience is pursuing them as well.
Yeah, their repentance. Okay. So here is Joseph, godly man, because in fact they expected Joseph to do evil in return to them. But as godly as he is, their conscience led them to say, here, look here, we have done wrong. But one of the things that I want you to see is where uh, Joseph says, am I in the place of God? In other words, here's what Joseph is saying. By divine providence, God sent me down to Egypt to preserve life. God sent me down to Egypt because he wants to remember his people and the promise he made to Abraham. Because had they stayed where they had, the famine would have possibly wiped them out. But God took them into Egypt through me, through Jacob, to preserve life, so that the promise made to Abraham can still continue. So that even though Egypt, all that we have in Exodus is God working his purpose out and his scheme of redemption. And it began with Joseph going down to Jacob going down into Egypt, Joseph being sold in Egypt, and Joseph becoming the second ruler of Egypt. All right. Now, now watch this. If we look at Egypt's relationship with Moses, Moses is born, raised in Egypt. He, of course, had to go back, leave Egypt. He went back. But notice this though. Notice this passage in Exodus 2:11 to 14. Exodus 2:11 to 14. Watch this. Um, one day when Moses had grown up, I want you to notice this. When Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens and saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together, and he said to the man in the wrong, Why do you strike your companion? He answered, Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses was afraid and thought, Surely the thing is known. When Pharaoh heard it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by the well. I'm going to come back to this. So Moses has also his, before going to deliver Egypt, his problem with Egypt. All right. Now, let's now go into chapter 1 of Exodus. All right. Let's go into chapter 1 of Exodus. And I'm not going to make you sweat, but we want to begin with an outline of chapters 1 and 2 of Exodus. If we're going to break down chapters 1 and 2, here's how we might do it. And here's how we're going to approach chapters 1 and 2. Israel and Egypt, we have the oppression of the nation. The oppression of the people of Israel, I mean, and that nation is rejecting God. That's the overall theme, the overall pattern, the overall idea, the overall subject, sorry, in Exodus chapter 1. So there's the oppression, and Egypt rejects God. That's chapter 1, verse 1 to 22. Breaking down chapter 1, now, here's what we have. We have the past deliverance of Israel. That's chapter 1, verses 1 to 7. Then we have the enslavement of Israel by Egypt in verses 8 to 22. When we get down into verses chapter 2, we have the birth of Moses, chapter 2, verse 1 to 10. And then we have the first significant event in Moses' life in verses 11 to 25. That's the outline of the chapter. And I want to remind you that when you do your class notes and your summary, I want you to do an outline of the chapters that we're looking at, right? To outline the chapters. Okay, now watch this. I won't go on to reading verses 1 through to 7. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came from Egypt with Jacob and with his household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Note that. 70 persons. All right? Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. So there are 70 that went into Egypt originally. I want you to notice this now. Look at verses 6 and 7, and this is very important. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. But watch this. But the people were fruitful, they increased greatly, they multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Now, this description is very important, because what these verses 6 and 7 tell us they are describing for us the rapid growth, the rapid population growth within Egypt among the Israelites. And notice the verbs that God is using, or the descriptions that God is using. They were fruitful, they increased abundantly, they multiplied, they grew mightily. All right, now notice, if we go back to Genesis 1, don't leave Exodus yet. If we go back to Genesis 1, and if we look at verse 21 to 22 of Genesis chapter 1, here's what we have. So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moved with the waters, with which waters swarm, according to their kinds. Every winged bird, according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. Watch this now, verse 22. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. Here is it now. At the creation, when God is populating the earth, God says, be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters, multiply. Now, this is the same situation, going back now to Genesis chapter 1, where we have with the people. They were fruitful, they increased greatly, they multiplied, and they grew exceedingly strong. Is there any, let me pause this one. Is there anything that you notice about, let me ask the question another way. What caused the increase, this rapid growth in creation and in Exodus? What caused that rapid growth?
God.
That's part of the answer. God what?
God allowed it to happen. He did it.
I want you to use a word that the scriptures use. Well, you're free to use the word that the scripture uses. There's a word that the scripture uses about God in Genesis 1. God did what?
He created.
No, that's not the word I'm looking for.
He blessed them.
That's the word I'm looking for. God blessed. You see that? No. In the creation, God blessed the earth. It grew, it multiplied, whatever. In Egypt, the Israelites, all right, let's go back. The Israelites were fruitful, they were increased. Why? Because God was blessing them. I want you to see that the population growth among the Israelites is parallel to, or there's a correlation between God's blessing and their prosperity. That's what I want you to see. Now, this is a promise that God made. All right, help me out with these passages now. One of you could get Genesis. I'll get Genesis 22:17. Somebody else gets Genesis 26:4, Genesis 28:14, and Genesis 46:3. Now, let me show you something, because I don't want you to miss this. The increase in the population was attributed and is attributed to God blessing them. All right. Now look at 22:17. I will surely bless you. Watch this. I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand is on the seashore, and your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. God is making a promise to Abraham. I am going to bless you, and in that blessing, it is going to be seen in the increase. All right, I'm blessing you. And then he says, your offspring is going to be like the stars of heaven. All right, look at 26:4, Genesis 26:4. Whoever has that can read it.
And I will make your descendants multiply as stars of heaven. I will give you the descendants of all these lands, and in your seed all nations of the earth shall be blessed.
All right, you see again the relationship between the blessing and the prosperity. Look at chapter 28 and verse 14. Genesis 28 and verse 14. Whoever has that can read.
28:14. Also, your descendants shall be as dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and in you and in your seed all families of the earth shall be blessed.
All right, that's verse. Now look at chapter 46 and verse 3. Genesis 46 and verse 3.
So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there.
All right, okay. God, from the very beginning, is saying, you are going to go down to Egypt. See, you see, God already knew that Abraham's offsprings, Abraham's sons, were going to go down to Egypt. But when they go down to Egypt, they are going to be blessed. How is that blessing going to be realized? It is going to be realized by their population growth. They were going to be fruitful. They were going to increase abundantly. They were going to be multiplied. They were going to grow mightily. What is God doing here? You see, Israel grew to more than 6,000 men above 20 years old. They grew in population. Look at Exodus. I think this is Exodus 12, I think I want. Look at Exodus 12. Let me show you something. Exodus chapter 12, verses 37 and 38. And the people of Israel journeyed from Rameses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. So men above the age of 30, of 20, the count didn't include women, the count didn't include children. There were 6,000 men. Now, not only did they have livestock, but they could bear arms when they left. So, how many people went down into Egypt? Originally 70. There are 3 million people who left. God is shaping and has shaped a nation for himself. They're going to go down to Egypt. Yes, they're going to be oppressed. Yes, they're going to be enslaved. But God, through Moses, is going to deliver them and make them into a nation, a kingdom of priests, give them laws, give them direction, and make himself a people. All right? That's what is happening here. That's why the growth in chapters 1, 6 to 7 is very significant. All right. So when we come back to the idea in verses 6 and 7 that they were fruitful, that they increased, this is all God's doing. I want you to see that. All right. Okay. Does that make sense to you all? What's your response to that? Anybody?
God's a promise keeper and he makes a way for his people.
God is going, notice, not just Chip, but everybody else. God in the famine, remember what Joseph said? I am not in the place of God. God is sending me down there to preserve life. And here it is now, God is making himself a people. Yes, he's a covenant keeping God. And yes, he's going to work out his redemption. All right? Now, watch this. When we look at chapter 1, Exodus, and as I said, I won't read all of it. We'll just go through some highlights here. What we see is, all right, step now into verse 8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. You mean the great Egypt that we just saw in a couple of slides ago, where they're economically powerful, they are rich, they are scientifically advanced, they are all of that. And Pharaoh is going to say that they are too mighty for us. You know what I'm going to do then? We are then going to have to hold them down. We are now going to have to keep them under wraps. So this is the cause of the oppression. What we see here is the cause of the oppression of the enslavement in verses 8 to 10. All right, now watch this. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. The idea here is that Pharaoh became afraid of the growth of the people. All right, verse 12. All right, therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Rames. But notice, but the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and in all of works all kinds of works in the field. In all of his works, he was
Did we lose him?
Yeah, he looks frozen. Well, I guess we can take our break, huh? All right, close to break time.
Yeah. Do you have his number? Perhaps you can text him.
I do have his number.
Emmanuel, how are you, brother?
I'm doing very well. Yourself?
Good, good. You are in Ghana, right?
Yes, please.
Mhm. Great. Is it the afternoon or the night?
Yes, it's afternoon. It's 2:11 over here.
2:11. Do you have Facebook, brother?
Yes, I have Facebook.
Okay. Can I find you by your name?
Exactly.
Okay. I will try to find you to see your word there.
I didn't hear back. I did not hear back from him, but I figure like let's just take a break, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
he's not here, so let's take advantage of the time that he's not here, so we can use him while he is.
Let's take 10 minutes.
Sounds good.
Okay, okay.
You Onyame boafue, onyame boafue,
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Well, it's okay. I guess the good Lord said it was time for us to take a break.
All right. Okay. Let me see if I can get the slide back up. Are you seeing the slide now? Are you seeing the slide?
No.
Not seeing the slide. Okay.
I think you have to put it on your whole screen.
Yeah, that's. Are you still not seeing, right? Are you seeing it?
No.
Hey, Eddie, future reference on this thing. I think this is the one you can upload stuff to it. And then you can kind of click it, and then it'll be. I think this is the one that we're using that did that. You can. Let me see if I can look at it. Present. Yeah, so future reference on this, you can press that button down at the bottom, the plus. Once you press the share plus button, you can for your slideshow, you can press slides at the top of that, and then you can upload your slides to this program.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. Okay. Are you still not seeing this here?
No, sir.
Okay. Present. Video file, image file, slide. Video announcements. Ah, hmm. You're still not seeing my screen. All right, you're in the show. Are you seeing it now? Are you seeing it now?
I can see the slide.
You can see the slide now. All right.
All right, we're closer.
Yes,
There you
I
go.
can see now. There's a
Okay.
transmission, yeah.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened because I'm there teaching, and the slide just went. All right. Okay, let's start. All right, let's start up again. We will possibly take and see how we go on from here. All right. What I Let's go back to first to Exodus 20, Exodus 1, 8 to 22. All right. Now, what we see in Exodus is from 8 to the end of the chapter. We see that there is the cause for the oppression in verses 8 to 10. We see God's promise in verses 11 to 14, or the promise that they are going to be multiplied and all of that, even though um, they were afraid of them. Now, I want us to look at the verse 15 to 21 is what we have in the text, a plot of deception. And what we have in this deception is that they were to kill all the firstborn males. Now, in verse 20, I want you to look at verse 20 of chapter 1. So God dwelt, all right, then verse 50. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you serve as the midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live. Now notice something here now. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Israel called the midwives and said to them, why have you done this and let the male child live? So here is it. I want you to see that even in this verse, within Egypt, that had their other deities, that had their other gods, all right, they had within it people who feared God. The midwives feared God. And how did they deceive the king? They said, well, verse 19, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them. So God dwelt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. So that is the issue in verse 1, in chapter 1. Now in verse 22, then Pharaoh commanded all his people, every son that is to be born to the Hebrews, you shall cast him into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. So here is the idea now, is that people were to be throwing their male children into the sea, into the Nile, into the river. All right. Now let's look at some of the issues here now. So that basically is chapter 1 of Exodus. All right. That's chapter 1 of Exodus. Now then, any comments or questions on that before we move on? I don't think there should be, but if there is, let's look at it, and if not, then we can move on. All right, no. All right, let's get into now chapter 2 of the book. Now, their entrance into Moses. We have looked at this already, but I just want us to look at some discrepancy here, or seeming discrepancy. Look at Acts 7 and verse 14. Acts 7 and verse 14. And this might come up in some of your studies, and I want just to alert you to it. Acts chapter 7 and verse 14. All right, Acts 7:14 says, 7 and verse 14. Let me just look at it. And Joseph sent and summoned Jacob his father and all his kindred, 75 people in all. The report that we have in Exodus says that there are 70 that went down into Egypt. Stephen, in preaching, says that there were 75. Is there a contradiction? And people have used this to say, well, you see, there is this contradiction, therefore the story is false, we can't believe it. But the response here is to that argument is the source from which Stephen is looking. In using the Septuagint, that's what the LXX is, the 70, he is including Joseph's grandchildren. And that is that accounts for it. All right. Now, what we have in Egypt is a forced labor camp. And I think David pointed out to this. There was a king who knew not Joseph. That king might be the 17th dynasty of Hyksos, or the how do you say David?
Ixos.
Ixos, right? All right, Ixos. Yeah, and he might have ruled from 1670 to 1550 BC. This is the king that knew not Joseph. This is a seeming idea. All right, there is the forced labor. Well, I think the slide switched, but the taskmaster the taskmaster, that term actually means there were slaves, slave masters, slave owners. And what the word indicates is that as far as the Egyptians were concerned, they were using them to achieve an end and a particular purpose. They had a goal in mind to build their cities, and the Egyptians, because they were so strong and so mighty, would have been the ideal persons to use. All right, so that's the chapters 1 and 2. Now let's go on. What's Pharaoh's strategy? Now, as we look at chapter 2, we're going to see in chapter 2 the birth of Moses. But Pharaoh's strategy is this: he is going to be employing the tactic of genocide. All right. Now, the king is ordering. I think we went through this already. So in summary, the first chapter gives us a preview of the story and Pharaoh's effort to defeat God's people. But of course, that's not going to happen. All right. Why? Because of what we have in the situation here in Egypt in chapter 1 is the fact that God, by his providence, is himself a great nation. That already in Genesis chapter 20 and verse 50. Genesis 50 and verse 20. All right. God is keeping them alive. God is preserving them alive because he wants to make for them a great nation. All right. Now, if we look at, before we get into chapter 2, if we look at chapter 1 in terms of a summary, not only are we seeing God's prominence and God's purpose and all of that, what we're seeing, what I also want you to notice is that there are certain types within the book, and you will hear, I know people like Patrick would have heard about typology, and others of you, I'm sure, would have heard about typology. But I want to point out certain types and symbols that are used here in this chapter. We have, I think you have a question about how does this Exodus point to certain things in the new. And I want in chapter 1 and verse 8, now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. Egypt is a type of the sinful world. All right. And it is a world that enslaves God's people physically in Egypt, but also that sin enslaves, that puts us in bondage. So Egypt in here, as we look at Egypt, Egypt is a type of world. It's a type of the sinful world. Now, in the same way that Egypt is a sinful world, a world that enslaved God's people, it is a type of sin, the world, where we are enslaved by sin. it points to that kind of a relationship. Now let's look at First John chapter 2. I think a passage that we are very familiar with. First John chapter 2 and verse 15, and also Romans chapter 6, verse 16 to 17. All right, let me hear chapter First John chapter 2, verse 15 to 16. And then Romans 6, 16 to 17. All right, First John 2, 15 to 16, and Romans 6, 16 to 17.
I'll get the Romans one.
Okay, all right. Somebody let's get John from, please.
You say First John?
Yeah, First John chapter 2, verse 15 to 17.
Do not love the word or the things in the word. If anyone loves the word, the love of the Father is not in him.
Do not love the world or the things in the world. The love of the
Are you reading, Patrick? All right. Who's reading? I think Patrick's has a little delay in his thing.
Patrick, you can read 16.
Or who was reading a while ago? Whoever was reading a while ago can continue reading. Was it you, Emmanuel?
was Patrick.
Or just Patrick?
Yeah.
Oh. All right, David, you want to go ahead?
Okay.
The
He has
last
delay, I believe.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
verse 16.
Mhm.
For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but of the Word.
All right. Okay. Chip, you want to read now your passage in Romans?
Romans 6, verse 16 and 17 says, Do you not know that when you present yourselves to someone as slaves for obedience, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin resulting in death or of obedience resulting in righteousness? But thanks be to God that though you were slaves of sin, you became obedient from the heart to that form of teaching to which you were committed.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Just give me a minute. One sec. All right. In Romans chapter 6, what we have is that sin is a burden. Sin is enslavement. All right. So I'm suggesting that Egypt is a type of sinful world. All right. Now, if Egypt is a type of sinful world, then Pharaoh is a picture of Satan. And Satan, like Pharaoh, is seeking to keep us in bondage. All right. Look at these passages here now. As we look at Pharaoh being a type of Satan. All right. If 2 Corinthians 4:4, Ephesians 2:2, and Hebrews 4:14. All right. 2 Corinthians 4:4, Ephesians 2:2, and Hebrews 2:14.
Second Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. Whose mind of the God of this age has branded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine on them. Amen.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody that's Ephesians 2:2 and Ephesians 2:14.
Ephesians 2:2 says, in which you, well, I guess I really need to do one. And you were dead in your trespasses and sin, in which you formerly walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience.
All right. Hebrews 2:14.
Inasmuch as then as the children have partaken of flesh and blood, he himself likewise share in his same, that through death he might destroy him who had the power of death, that is the devil.
All right. Okay. When we put all of these passages together, 2 Corinthians, the God of this world has blinded our eyes. All right. In Ephesians chapter 2, Satan is called the prince of the power of the air. All right. Hebrews chapter 2, we are the Satan is our master. So if we look at the symbols and the pictures in chapter 1, what we see is that Egypt is a type of sin, Pharaoh is a type of the devil, of Satan, and the taskmaster is that evil men who will ridicule, who will harass, who will poke fun of our relationship with God. All right. So I just want us to read just one passage here. I think Matthew 5:11 talks about when men shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you. Well, let's look at 2 Timothy 3:12. All right, 2 Timothy 3 and verse 12.
Indeed, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted.
All right. So here's though what we have. That's basically what we have in chapter 1. The picture of or a type antitype relationship between Egypt, the world, Pharaoh, Satan, and our taskmasters, those who would really ridicule us out of our faith. All right. Now, jumping into chapter 2. If we're going to outline chapter 2 or outlining chapter 2, we are looking at verses 1 to 10, Moses and his early life. That is what we see that in verses 1 to 10. We see his attempt at deliverance in verses 11 to 15. Okay? Then we see his life in Midian from verses um, 16 to 22. And it's not there, but it should be here. Verses 23 to the end, we see God's response to their groaning. So verses 23 to to the end, 25, God's response to their groaning. All right. Now let's go through and see what we can get from these passages. All right. Now, in verses 1 to 10, now a man from the house of Levi went and took his wife, a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she held him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took him to a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds of the river bank. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young woman walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened, she saw the child, and behold, the child was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew woman to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the child went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses. Why? Because she said, "I drew him out of the water." Now, Moses lived for some 120 years. Okay? Moses lived 120 years, give or take. But what we notice about his life is divided into three 40-year cycles. 3 40-year cycles. Now, this is going to be, I want to make a point of this. Look at, just for information's sake, Acts chapter 7 and verse 23, Exodus 7 and verse 7, and Deuteronomy 34:7. So 120 years he lived, and it was broken down into 3 40-year cycles. Now look at Acts 7 and verse 23. And then Exodus 7:7, and then Exodus 34:7. And then Deuteronomy 34:7 rather.
Acts 7:23.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel.
All right. Okay. So Moses is 40 years old now. Exodus 7:7. Exodus 7:7.
And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh.
All right. You see, here's it now. The Bible is giving us specific timelines as to his age. So when he went to speak to Pharaoh, he's 80. So 40 years has elapsed. Deuteronomy 34:7. All right, Deuteronomy
Although
30.
Moses was 125 years old when he died, his eye was not dim, nor his vigor abated.
All right, so when he died, he's now 120. So from his meeting Pharaoh, leading the people through Israel, all of that, he becomes now 120 years old. Now, what do we know about him if we go back to Exodus chapter 2? The first 40 years he spends in the palace. And we see that in Exodus 2 1 to 15. So he's in the palace.
Mm-hmm.
The second 40 year is he's a shepherd in verses 16 to 17. And then the final period of his life, he is a leader of the Israelites. And we see that in chapter 4 and verse 18. So, what do we have about Moses? He lives in a royal palace, he becomes a shepherd, and then, of course, he's the leader of the Israelites. Now, here is the issue now. Chapter 2, we're in chapter 2, verses 2 to 6. Moses, I want us to keep in mind Moses' description. We're told that he was, we're told about his physical features. All right? And we know something about his family background, that he was very beautiful. He is a Levi, okay, and he was hidden for 3 months. So he's a Levi. He is a very attractive young boy, and the mother was able to hide him for 3 months. All right. Now, I want you to see something here. Some of you know a former student. I know David knows him. I know clearly Chip knows him. One of our former students, Andre from Costa Rica. So David would know him. I think you do. All right. He preached a sermon about Moses' ark. All right, Moses' ark, the ark of Moses. And he was making the point, Andres, that we always think about Noah's ark, but Moses also had an ark. All right. And why is he saying that? Moses, if we look at chapter 2, is placed in a basket. Now, in verse 3, when she could hide him no longer, she took him for a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with the bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed him among the reeds by the river bank. Now, that word basket, tiva, is the word that is used in reference to Noah's ark. All right. So it's the same word. All right. Now, here's it. When Moses was getting older as a child and about to eat food and all of that kind of thing, he was being weaned. What we see providentially here is that Moses is raised by Pharaoh's daughter. But here I want us not to miss God's providence. Who is it that Pharaoh's daughter is asking to take care of Moses?
Moses' sister.
Moses' sister. All right. So even though, and we're going to look at it, even though Moses is being raised and cultured in Egyptian culture and history and lifestyle and habits, we see that he's not totally divorced from his Hebrew Israel's history, Israel's culture. He's not taken away from God, because being raised by his sister, it means that the values of Israel would be inculcated, would be engrafted into Moses, even though he is in a world of culture and Egyptian lifestyle. And we're going to see something. In fact, this point is going to be made soon, where Moses, raised by his sister, a Hebrew, in an Egyptian environment. All right. So, what? Yeah. Any comment?
Eddie, please, is it Moses' mother that was recommended by her sister, or he was raised by the sister?
Okay. Look at the verse. Okay. Let me see. Look at the verse. Now the daughter. What verse is it?
Verse 7.
Look at verse 7.
Yeah, verse 7.
Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Yes. Is that Patrick? Who
Yes,
asked the question?
please.
Yes. So you are correct. The passage would reveal that it's Moses' mother that eventually raises him. You see that? So if you look at the chain of events, Pharaoh's daughter sends for the mother. And the implication is that, yes, it is the mother that is raising him. Thank you for that. The point is that in an Egyptian environment and culture, Moses is being raised by his mother, yes. And she is going to inculcate godly principles in him. All right? Point eight. Okay. And thank you for that. Now, here's something. All right? Moses' name is Masha. Masha. And it means drawn out of the water. But I want you to notice something. That name is an Egyptian word. And it is found in words such as Rameses and Thutmose. So Moses has an Egyptian name. and he's called Moses, which is an Egyptian name, and Thutmoses. And if you look at the word, you will see Moses in it. Now, this was a common word for the pharaohs. So Thutmoses means the God is born. Rameses means the Son of God has been given to me. So Moses, the Son of God, is born and is given to me. Even though the word means drawn out from the water, in the Egyptian language, it means the God is born and given. All right. So the Egyptian
Brother,
word, say it again. Yes.
um, does it also mean anything like the Egyptians also saw the River Nile as a god in the range of gods that they had,
Yes.
in the sense that Moses was drawn out of the water, so they thought it was a gift from their god.
Exactly. Exactly. So you see the idea that, okay, Moses means drawn out of the water, yes, but here is a God that comes out of the water that has been given to us. That's Moses. And that is significant that Moses has that, okay, that credential, if you want to put it that way, right? So that's why, that's his name, that's the significance of his name. So he is the son of Re, the son of Re who came out of the water. All right. Now, watch this. Look at verses 11 to 15. All right. Look at verses 11 to 15. All right. Now, on the day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his, okay, I don't want to read the story, but the idea is he looks and he sees the Hebrew children, two Hebrew men fighting, two of his countrymen fighting, and he is troubled and he's saying, why are you fighting each other? Good. Um, you don't need to fight one another. All right. So here is what we have in verses 11 to 15. We can call these verses the first Exodus. Why? Look at verse 15. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. All right, watch this. So, in a sense, this would be the first Exodus in Exodus, where Moses is moving away from. Moses is running away from. Moses is exiting, leaving. All right, you see that? Now, I want you to go back to a passage that we read earlier and notice something here. One day when Moses, and I watch this, I want you to see this. One day Moses had grown up. When Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burden, and he saw the Egyptian beating his beating a Hebrew, one of the people, he looked this way and that, and seeing. So I want you to notice something now. Moses grew up, he went out, and he saw. Now, I don't want us to read Acts 7:22 because we've read it before. I want us to go to Hebrews chapter 11. Bear in mind those words. He went out, he grew up, he went out, and he saw. All right. Now, look for me at Hebrews 11:24 to 26. All right, and someone can read that for me. Hebrews 11:24 to 26.
By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasure of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he looked to the reward.
That's up to verse 26.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I said I didn't want to read Acts 7:22, but I'm going to read it. And Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in his words and deeds. What does it mean when it says he is mighty in his words and deeds? What does that mean? He's mighty in his words and deeds. What does that say about Moses? That what it says
He
he's
talks
mighty
the
in
talk
his
and
words.
walks the walk.
If what?
Talks the talk, walks the walk.
Talks the talk and walks the walk. Anybody else? Moses is mighty in words and deeds.
Probably he learned about speeches, about the how to speak in public, about I don't know architecture and managing and everything because he was in the palace. So probably he was listened when he said something.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? Moses is mighty in words and deeds. Emmanuel, you want to give a try?
I can say he abides by his word.
All right. He abides by his words. Okay. Patrick, he's mighty in words and deeds. All right. Okay. Watch this. Moses was not only a man of action, he was not only a person who could do things and accomplish things, because of course he is the one of the rulers in Egypt. I'm sorry. He lived in the palace, so his words carried weight. But Moses could communicate. Moses was a man of action. Moses was a man who was cultured. Moses was a man who was educated. I think one of you said that. Moses could talk. He could talk the talk. Right? But is this all right? Let me not go ahead of myself. Let's now go to the passage in Hebrews chapter 11. All right, watch this. Hebrews chapter 11. Remember, we said that he grew up, he went, and he saw back in Exodus chapter 2. Now, notice what the Hebrew writer says of him here. that when he was grown up, all right, one translation says when he became mature. Moses, when he could think for himself, when Moses could analyze for himself, when he could think for himself, what does Moses do? Moses did certain things here. Moses refused. Verse 25, Moses chose, Moses considered. Verse 26 again, Moses looked. Verse 27, Moses left. And I want you to, this is important. You know why? Okay. While he was a young man and could not think for himself, though mighty in word and deed after he matured, his maturity made Moses was able now to act. First of all, what he did, he refused. He willed, he chose not to do. Why did he choose not to do? Because he could appreciate the vast blessings, the recompense, the reward that he would get for serving God. And so he refused. I am not going to do this. Why? Because of what I see in the future. That's one thing. Secondly, Moses said, okay, given the recompense of the reward, given the fact that I'm in this environment and I cannot benefit from God's promises, he says, you know what, I'm going to leave Egypt. Verse 27, by faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king. I'm going to show you something. Not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Now watch me. Moses not only given his maturity. You know what Moses now says? It is better to serve, to be mistreated with serving God than enjoying the pleasures of living in Egypt. Moses now is balancing his priorities. Moses is saying he grew up, he went out, and he saw. He is very educated, mighty in words and mighty in deeds, man of action, man of, he could communicate. Yes, he can talk the talk and all of that. But notice Moses's decision is that, look here, I am going to act because of what I see is the reward. I'm not going to be involved in any momentary pleasure. That's the pleasures of sin. They don't last. Moses, as he grew up in maturity, he saw that and could appreciate that. All of that is because Moses is analyzing, evaluating, assessing his present situation, being in Egypt with the pleasures of sin, is not as good. It's not as good as being in with the people of God, suffering with the people of God. Moses, no, I'm not going to do that. So watch this now. Moses left. Now, What Moses does when he saw these Egyptians fighting, Moses felt called out of compassion to deliver the people from Egypt and identify with them. Moses felt that he had a responsibility to identify with the people of God and to deliver them. You see that? Here's something else. It says that Moses looked. What does it mean? Moses looked. He watched with deep emotion and sympathy. I want you to see something here. Don't move from Hebrews chapter 11. Go back to Hebrews chapter 2. Hebrews chapter 2. And I want you to see something. And I'm going to ask you this question. I want to ask you this question. Look at chapter 2, verse 14. He answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Surely the thing is known." Watch this now. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by the well. I want verse 14. Then Moses was afraid and thought, surely the thing is known. We know here that Moses was afraid. That's what the passage says. But look at chapter 11 and verse 24. All right. Okay. Verse 27 rather. By faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. How do you reconcile the two? One verse says he was afraid and fled. The other one says he was not afraid. Is he or is he not afraid?
I'm not quite sure, but the writer of Hebrews is giving us a much more comprehensive view of these situations. I don't know. I would lean towards the second writer. Looks like the second writer has more information. I don't know. That's what I got.
All right. David, what would you say? Is he afraid or is he not afraid?
Afraid of Pharaoh?
Mm-hmm.
Of course he is. Of course he was, because when you see him sat down by a well, it's the same picture that we have with Agar. She sat at the wells, and he's afraid, of course.
Eddie, here's the question for you. Let me ask you this. So when you're talking, it says, it doesn't specifically say in 2:14 that this fear was of Pharaoh. It says he was afraid, but it doesn't say of Pharaoh. I mean, he could be afraid of the mission in front of him. He could be, afraid of where he's going, doesn't know anybody. I don't know.
Chip, you're not going to pull that one over me, You're not going to pull me that. It's said in the context of Exodus chapter 2, he's afraid of what Pharaoh might do to him,
I
right?
think he's afraid that the
That's an assumption on our part.
that he made
Okay.
a crime.
Hmm? What's that?
I think that he's afraid that the crime that he committed is already revealed.
All right. Okay.
That sounds right. That sounds good. Yeah,
All right.
makes
Okay.
sense.
Emmanuel, what do you think? Is he afraid or is he not afraid?
He is afraid, probably.
But the Bible says that he was afraid, so there's no question about that.
But Hebrew says he was not afraid. You see? Um, Patrick, you want to comment?
Yeah, he knew the consequences of the sin or the crime that he had committed, which was immediate. But he also knew greater purpose, that is future, because he had already forsook Egypt. So that is the second part of not being afraid,
All right. I think Patrick is closer to it.
leaving all the comforts behind and moving into a new land with all the challenges that might come.
All right. Yeah. Here's it. In Exodus chapter 2, he's afraid because of the consequences of his action, because he knew that what he did, though we might say, well, he did it for saving his people. Yes, that was wrong. That was a crime. And he did it out of protecting his people. So he's afraid of the consequences. But Moses is not afraid in Hebrews chapter 12, in view of he's not afraid to challenge Pharaoh. He's not afraid to confront Pharaoh. He's not afraid to stand up to Pharaoh because he sees the recompense of the reward. You see what I'm saying? So, okay, he is mighty in words and deed. He is able to confront Pharaoh knowing that there is a greater reward awaiting him. In Exodus chapter 2, he's afraid of the consequences that he would be legitimately guilty of, right? For killing the Egyptian. But he's doing that out of sympathy, not that it is right, or out of sympathy for his people, because he's moved by the suffering that his people are going through. And therefore, when and we're going to see this in the next time, he is going to flee. But if he is afraid, why go back? Is he not afraid that he's going to be caught? What is he going back to do? Question. Anybody? You're afraid, so you run away. So why go back to the scene of the crime? Why would he want to do that? And he's afraid. Can you explain?
Because the Pharaoh that was present when he murdered the Egyptian was dead already.
Yeah,
So
but go on.
so I think the news spread all over the world, so people knew that there was another Pharaoh. So probably he think, okay, now if God wants me there, even though he put some excuses as well, but he did.
Yeah. And you know what? He is mighty in words, but in the excuse he says to God, I
So
can't talk. I'm not eloquent.
until he killed the Egyptian, the people of
The people of Egypt, people knew.
Egypt were thinking Moses was still with them and the child of
You see, okay, I see what you're saying, Patrick. I mean, you break up some. Here is the idea: the consequences of his action made him afraid because there would have been legitimate consequences. But they're afraid of the past. They're afraid in Hebrews chapter 11. Moses is prepared in view of the recompense of the reward. Not he's going back to Egypt to confront Pharaoh. And then he's not afraid. All right, he's going to stand up to him. I thought I'd bring that out because sometimes people might question you about that. All right. Now, here is the point. Look at this with me now. All right. When Moses ran away, he went to Midian. All right. So he runs away back, and I want us to look at this map. He runs away and he goes back to Midian. And he goes to Midian. Now watch his journey. He is in, are you seeing Goshen? Are you seeing the map? Are you seeing, if I should, are you seeing the map? If I put, I'm going to put it up again. Are you seeing the map?
I see. I am seeing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Based on what we have, yeah. Okay, great. Based on what we have in Exodus 2:14 to 15, he, verse 14, he flees to Midian. Where is he? Exodus 2, verse 14. Just a minute. He answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? You mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat there by a well. All right, watch this. So where is Moses? He's in Goshen, right there. All right. So now he moves and he travels, runs away past Elim, and he goes to Midian. And according to verses 16 to 22, Moses stays in Midian. And we're going to come back to that. All right. Because we're going to get some information about Moses from there. Moses from Midian. Then he leaves Midian and comes back and goes right back to Goshen, to Ramis, goes back to Pharaoh. So that is Moses's trip. All right. Now this is journey. I want you to see something here though. Let us look at chapter verses 16 to 22. And this is going to be crucial. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come so soon today?" They said, an Egyptian us our delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and drew water from us and watered the flock. He said to his daughters, then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. So he gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. Here we have more information about Moses. We know that Moses married Zipporah. Notice this, stick it in your head. He married an Egyptian, Zipporah. We know that his father-in-law is Ruel from the text. We know that he has a son that's called Gershom. All of this is happening in Midian. But I want you to notice something in this text that you might not be seeing it. Where is Moses when these 7 daughters came to him? Where is he?
Somewhere with water.
Somewhere with water. He is by
the
a
well.
trough. He's by a trough, right? Yeah, somewhere water is. The other people are trying to drive away these women from the shepherds came and drove them away. Moses, we are told, stood up and saved them. So they get water from the well and they are able now to water their father's land. Good? Everybody sees that?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. Does that story sounds familiar to you? Is that, would you say, do you remember any story like this? No, nobody remembers.
Is it
Are we
the
talking?
woman by the well that met Jesus?
Okay, was Jesus at the well and a woman comes to him and he saves her by,
He goes to
do
her.
you remember that? This is where we have.
Is it the
Mhm.
lame man by the pool of Bethesda?
No, not by the one by Bethsaida is the crippled man. But this is a relationship to John chapter 4.
Yeah.
The type and antitype where the woman comes to the water, to the well, Jacob's well, to draw water. And Jesus has this conversation with her. And she leaves more refreshed than she came. Here, we're told that Moses stood up and did what? Save these women. So there's a type, antitype relationship here between Moses and Jesus. Jesus is at the well. This woman comes to him. He promised her living water. She leaves and says, hey, come look at this man who has told me everything. We're told in Exodus chapter 2 that Moses is by a trough. The women come to him, he stands up and saves them, and they go and waters their father's yard, home, land, and they are refreshed. There's the type, antitype between Moses here and Christ. Moses is seen as a savior here, as Jesus is a savior in John chapter 4. Jesus is supplying living water. Moses is supplying physical water. The type, antitype thing here. I want you to see that. So one of the questions that you have is, how does the book of Exodus point to redemption, point to Jesus Christ? Here's a case in point. Make sense? Can you see the connection?
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. So Moses is there in Midian. Now let's go to the next slide. In Midian, Moses sat down at the well. This is typical of Jesus with the woman at the well. The girl's father is referred to as a priest, the priest of Midian. In verse 16, Jethro is Ruel. All right, so another name for Jethro is Ruel. Ruel means friend of God or shepherd of God. These are shepherds. God is my shepherd or friend. Look at Genesis 36 and verse 4. Genesis 36 and verse 4. Genesis 36 and verse 4 says, and Ada bore to Esau Eliphaz, Basme bore Ruel. All right, it's not the same, necessarily the same Ruel, right? But the idea is he's considered, that is, Ruel is considered to be Moses' father-in-law. Right? Ruel. And he is. His daughter's name is Zipporah, and a son, Gershom, is born, and Gershom means alien or stranger. All right? Now, so that is what we have in Moses' life in Moab, in Midian. Now, at the end of chapter 2, we go back to Egypt. During those many years, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groanings, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. All right. God remembers his people. All right. When we say that God remembers, it's not that he has forgotten. When we say that God remembers, and it says here that God remembered his people, what it means is that God is going to act for and on behalf of his people. When God remembers, God is going to be merciful to his people. God is going to be gracious to his people. It is not that he forgot. When God remembers, it doesn't mean that, oh, I forgot to do something. No, that's not it. It is when God remembers, the idea is that God is now going to act on behalf of his people. So, God heard their groanings, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham. In other words, he is going to bring to fulfillment the promise that he made to Abraham. They're groaning, so it is now time for him to act because of the covenant he made with Abraham. He's going to bless them that bless you. He's going to curse them that curse you. All right? So God is now going to act on behalf of his people. It's not that he forgot.
Brother,
Hmm?
Brother Eddie,
Yes.
this is the first time that we see Israel crying, right?
Yes.
For this bondage. So it's like that. God won't help you if you don't ask.
Yeah. You see, God, in fact, we have this phrase that says, God help those who help themselves. In other words, God, and between Exodus 1 and Exodus 2, all right, let me ask you, how long is Exodus 20 from Exodus 1 and Exodus 2? What's the time span? Can you hazard a guess?
From where?
Between Exodus 1 and verse 2, between Exodus 1 and Exodus 2, how many years you think that is? Let me see if you're thinking. Do you know that the number of years between Exodus 1 and Exodus 20?
80.
Hmm?
40 years.
How many? Who said? Chip, how many you said?
80.
80. Emmanuel, how many you said?
40. 40
All
years.
right. 40. Okay. What time, how long did Moses spend in Egypt?
40 years.
How long did he spend in Midian?
40 years.
So him going back to Midian is 80 years. You see that? Because he spent 40 years in Egypt, Then he left. In fact, they were killing people when he was born 40 years ago. He goes to Midian and spends 40, so it's 80 years. You get me? You see that? So it means that the people of Israel in Egypt were groaning and mourning and suffering for 80 years. You see that? And God remembered. God knew. That's what the text says. God knew. So now God is going to act. You see, okay, God is now. So you might say, where is God these 80 years? Where is he? Well, he has not forgotten, because he is going to fulfill his promise. I will curse them that curse you. And he is going to fulfill his promise, and he is going to show that he is a covenant keeping God.
Brother Eddie,
That, yes, yes. Somebody said,
Exodus 2:23
so that's what?
mentions sons of Jacob.
The sons of I'm not hearing the question. Sons of Jacob. Ask the question again, Patrick.
Exodus 2:23 mentions the death of a king.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that king?
verse 20, it would have been the king that was one of the kings that was oppressing them. It would be one of the pharaohs. It would be, how do we know? Because that pharaoh was killing the firstborn. We don't know the name of that. I think if you look at the one I gave, it would have been Ramis or one of them. Right. So it would be one of those pharaohs. But how do we?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of those pharaohs. Yeah. If you look at the dynasties that we had, I think it would be one of the pharaohs, I think, in one of those dynasties that we mentioned, if you go back and look at the slide. But I don't think that pharaoh is definitely named, but he would be one of maybe Ramis or one of them. But the point is, I can check that and give you the information tomorrow. But the point is that the people have been groaning for some 80 years.
Brother Eddie.
Yes.
Another. I was thinking, when God made the covenant with Abraham in Genesis 15, He said they will serve 400 years in verse 13, and then He promised that they will come out with great substance in verse 14, and in verse 16 they said the for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So as well, I think that was part of God's plan, because he need to wait for that in order today to come to the promised land and kill all the iniquity.
Yes, in fact, if you look at Galatians 3 verse 16, I think it says that the children of Israel spent 420 years before they left Egypt. They were in Egypt for 420 years. Between, yes, I think it's something like that. But give me the passage that Genesis 15:13.
Yeah, 15, 13 through 16.
All right. And your point being made is that God, all of this is according to God's purpose and God's promise. See what I'm saying? So very good, very good. I like that. Very good point, David. The idea here is that we could possibly say, okay, God has forgotten us. They could argue that. Where is God all of these 80 years? But it doesn't, the fact that he has not responded in your time doesn't mean that he does not care. You see what I mean? So that is going to be crucial. I think this is where, if we look at the application now, there is both Moses and Christ at times there are persecution. Pharaoh puts the boy babies to death. Herod does the same thing in Matthew 2:16. Moses and Christ were God's spokesmen. John 1:17, grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Law came by Moses. And Hebrews chapter 1, that God now speaks to us through his son. We're told that Moses was faithful in his own house, in his house, right? And Jesus is faithful in his house, over whose house we are, in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 1-6. And what we see is the providence of God being shown and being demonstrated in chapter 2. And the point is that God has not turned his back on his people, because he's a covenant keeping God. All right. So that's chapters 1 and chapter 2. All right. Any questions, comment, thoughts, take homes, whatever from the class?
When do we need to start getting in work? And do we need to be reading this commentary? We do, right?
Yes, you need to.
Okay. I'm just trying to keep up, man. I've got so much going on right now. You just wouldn't believe it. So I'm just trying to keep up with the work.
Okay.
So you want to outline stuff too? When do we turn in outlines?
Okay. Today is the 23rd. All right. Tomorrow will be the 24th, and that's where we do chapters 3 and 4. All right. Now, between tomorrow, Friday, tomorrow's Friday, right? Yeah. Between tomorrow, Friday, and next week, Thursday, your class notes and summary between that is Friday of this week, tomorrow Friday, and next week Friday. The last time for you to put in the notes on the LMS is next week Friday.
So you need notes for every single class that we've done.
Yeah, but yeah, and you just the notes that you have made, and plus your summary outline of the 4 chapters that we have done must be sent in. Yeah. So if you're reading the commentary, you want to pull something from the commentary, and you're reading chapters 1 to 4, summarize chapters 1 to 4 plus your class notes, and just upload it on the LMS.
So it'll be one summary from chapter 1 through 4.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it a summary or more like an outline?
More like an outline. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
You want an outline or do you want a summary, Eddie? Come on.
Okay. You can
outline. I prefer outline.
Outline sounds great.
Okay. If you want to put the outline in the form of a summary, fine. If you want to summarize, no sweat. In other words, if you do the outline, is not a problem. If you do the summary, is not a problem. So if you have the choice whether you want to do it in terms of outline form. Chapters 1 to 4 talks about this, that, about that. Chapters 2 verse 3 to 7 talks about that, talks about that. You can do it that way, or you could say chapter 1 is about, chapter 2 is about, chapter 3 is about, chapter 4 is about. If you want to do it that way, it doesn't really matter.
Brother, my notes are in handwriting. So do you prefer the outline in typing or handwriting?
Type them, please.
Okay.
Because
also, do you prefer my notes as well? Type them. Because I take notes with my hand.
Oh, can you type them? Can you get them typed? Is it difficult to get them typed?
I have 31 pages already of notes.
Oh my God.
That's why you're doing a summary. That's why you're doing a summary. You have 31 pages. That's why you're doing a summary. All right.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I promise.
Nice job,
okay. All right. Okay. I will accept your handwriting, but that is only for David. Emmanuel. Oh, okay. All right. Emmanuel, do you have a problem typing? No.
I have no problem. Yeah.
Okay, Patrick, do you have a problem typing?
Brother Eddie, my network was not helping me. We have 2 homeworks to submit, or is it 1?
1. In this, it's okay.
And that is outline of the 4 sessions.
Yes. So, okay, here, let me explain.
Okay.
Let me explain. You have had notes, the notes that you took. You are going to combine all of that in a summary of chapters 1 to 4. So in the notes that you have, chapter, okay, let me show you what I mean. Chapter 1, outline form. Chapter 1, 1
You
to
mean
3.
session one? Session one.
Yes, session 1.
Okay.
So in chapters, in the first class, we discussed A, B, C, D, E. Chapter
Yeah.
1 can be is about this. Chapter 1, that is if you're doing the summary. If you're doing the outline, chapter 1, verses 1 to 3, Moses in Egypt. Chapter 1, verses 4 to 9, Moses is called by God, and his reaction is this. That's what you're doing. You are putting your notes to make your own commentary. So that later on, when you want to plan a lesson on anything in Exodus, you don't have to go and do the research. You can pull your file and say, oh, I had these notes some 50 years ago. See what I'm saying? So
All right.
in your class notes, you can begin it this way. Chapter, the introduction spoke about this, and your notes will show that. Chapter 1, chapters 1, verse 1 to 5, the children of Israel are in Egypt as the sons of Pharaoh. All right. And if you, the notes that you have from there, 70 of them went into Egypt um, based on Jacob's descendant and the family. Chapter 2, we discussed in chapter 2 the call of Moses, all right, or the Israelites in Egypt. We said that they are, my notes, you don't have to say my notes, but the Israelites multiplied, they grew, they increased, suggesting God's blessing. Uh, your outline, chapter 2, it's a same, it's a one, it's, I don't want two separate things. You're going to merge all of your notes and the outline into one. So if you're going to, let's say
All
you're
right.
starting with okay, I want to make it very plain. All right. Chapter 1, verses 1 to 7. Israel increases in Egypt. Well, the notes that you have, what does it say? You might want to include in your notes on those verses what was said. All right. Then you go down to chapter 1, verses 8 to 15. Pharaoh oppresses Israel. And then what did your class note says? You're putting your class notes in there. Well, what does the commentary say? The commentary makes this point. You're going to put it in there, and that's what you're going to have. All right. So you have a
All
week.
right.
Is that clear to everybody?
Clear as mud,
Yes.
brother.
Clear as mud?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
with I don't have a copy of the book yet, so it means I would have to do with my notes and the Bible.
Yes.
Okay.
Fine. If you have the book and you want to say, well, Cole says that the word, say it again. Cole says that the word watch means look steadfastly. You're going to put that in it. So all of it you're having in one note form. All right? Make
All right.
sense?
Yeah.
All right. You have a
Thanks.
week to do that. You can, you have until next week, Friday, to upload it to the LMS.
All right.
All right?
All
I
right.
gotta go, my
Thank
brother.
you.
Okay, yes, man. No problem.
You have a great day.
All right, you too. All right, then. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you, brother. Bye bye.
Yeah, man. No, sir. Bye bye.